2015年第5條題目就係有關於神經系統同埋肌肉嘅。咁我哋呢度見到兩張相啦。P 呢張相咧就係一個神經元 R 就楞住一個肌肉嘅纖維嘅。咁呢度啦，亦都有一個神經肌肉嘅接點啦。而 Q 呢張相咧就係神經肌肉接點啦。咁呢度當中咧有兩個結構，就係 S 同埋 T 呢個波波啦。咁喺未入題目之前啊，當然啦有翻好習慣啦。R、S、T 究竟係咩嚟嘅咧？咁 R 啦，其實咧就係我哋嘅運動神經元啦。咁原因就係因為佢楞住嘅係肌肉纖維，係一個效應器嚟嘅。而 S 同埋 T 分別就係粒線體同埋呢個波波咧，就係突觸小泡。咁其實呢個好習慣咧，梁 Sir 都成日提大家噶啦，因為咧俾得啲咩 A、B、C 啊、R、S、T 你咧，題目一定問嘅。咁你睇下 Part A 就係問你啦。究竟呢個 R 嘅神經元係乜嘢呢？同埋一個咩嘅原因？咁其實成條題目就係考緊我哋呢個概念啦。究竟我哋可唔可以基於究竟佢連接住啲乜嘢嘅地方，從而去判斷佢係咩嘅神經元呢？而今次嘅題目佢話啊嘛，呢個神經元呢係楞住肌肉纖維嘅。咁所以根據翻書本嘅呢幅圖啦，肌肉纖維係一個效應器。咁所以楞住效應器嘅咧，一定係運動神經元啦。咁所以答案咧就係運動神經元，係因為佢楞住嘅咧就係效應器，而今次嘅效應器咧就係肌肉纖維啦。跟住去到 Part B 啦。S 同埋 T 呢兩個結構究竟有咩嘅功能性關係呢？咁其實功能性關係就係講緊呢兩者係點樣合作呢？而引申一個大啲嘅問題呢，其實就係問緊突觸嘅適應性特徵啦。題目呢轉少少嘅問法呢，其實已經係另一款題目，不過問嘅嘢係一模一樣嘅。佢可以問翻你啦，喺 Q 嘅呢一張相入面，利用翻 S 同埋 T 呢兩個結構去講翻突觸嘅適應性特徵。其實就係呢個意思。圖咧俾翻大家睇嘅啫。S 咧就係粒線體，而呢啲波波咧就係突觸小泡，而突觸小泡入面咧係承載住神經遞質嘅。咁呢條題目啦，無論佢係問緊你功能性嘅關係定還是適應性嘅特徵咧，其實所答嘅嘢都係差無幾嘅。首先我哋要知道翻突觸有咩嘅功能，而呢個功能同粒線體同埋突觸小泡嘅功能又有啲咩嘅關係呢？係講緊呢兩個結構點樣合作，而呢個結構係點樣引申到突觸嘅功能啫嘛。我今日基礎概念啦，粒線體嘅功能就係透過呼吸作用去釋放能量。突觸入面嘅突觸小泡咧，入面承載住嘅就係神經遞質，而啲神經遞質咧係會釋放去到突觸嘅，從而呢個神經遞質咧就會擴散去到突觸嘅另一邊，亦即係另一個嘅神經元啦。所以粒線體同埋突觸小泡嘅關係咧，粒線體就係提供能量去製造翻突觸小泡入面嘅神經遞質。又或者分泌神經遞質，由於神經遞質當接觸到另一個嘅神經元嘅時候咧，佢哋係會被拆解，所以當我哋吸收翻嘅時候咧，就要將佢重新製造啦。咁所以答案咧就有3個可能性啦。好，跟住去到 Part C，就要我哋去描述一下一個神經脈衝去到神經肌肉接點嘅時候啦，究竟係點樣導致到肌肉收縮咧？咁其實呢一 part 咧都係考翻我哋對於 A、B part 嘅理解啦。當中有啲咩嘅字眼啊？運動神經元啦。突觸啦、粒線體啦、突觸小泡啦，同埋神經遞質，呢啲咁嘅字眼可唔可以喺我哋呢一個答案出現呢？絕對可以。呢一 part 咧都同大家溫一溫書啦。突觸嘅呢一個結構其實唔淨止喺神經元之間咧去出現嘅，其實喺個神經元同埋肌肉之間都有呢個突觸，但係呢個突觸咧，我哋有個新嘅名就叫做神經肌肉接點。而呢個神經肌肉接點咧，我哋就睇翻呢幅圖咯。今次佢就唔係神經元去另一個神經元啦，而係由神經元去到肌肉嘅纖維。咁當中有啲咩嘅步驟呢？第一就係當神經脈衝去到運動神經元嘅末端嘅時候，或者我哋講 action 啦，就會引發我哋嘅神經元去釋出神經遞質，就去到突觸嘅位置。而呢個神經遞質咧，就會透過突觸咧擴散去到肌肉纖維嗰處。而喺個肌肉纖維嘅細胞膜嘅表面咧，都有一啲接收器，而呢啲接收器咧，亦都喺我哋以前細胞膜嘅 MC 講過啦，其實都係一啲糖蛋白，所謂嘅 glycoprotein。咁當佢接收咗之後啦，佢就會引發到肌肉收縮啦。所以 Part C 呢條題目咧都係非常之直白嘅，喺書本咧已經俾晒答案你咁滯噶啦。咁一樣嘢咧想提翻嘅就係當個肌肉纖維當佢產生一個impulse 嘅時候咧，咁我哋唔會稱呼佢做神經脈衝啊，我哋會稱呼翻佢做一個電荷嘅脈衝。咁啊，因為肌肉纖維唔係神經線啊嘛，咁我哋梗係唔會用神經脈衝去形容呢一個 impulse 啦。好，我哋又嚟一點出發啦。今次呢條題目咧就係講肌肉收縮做個切入點，當中考我哋嘅兩樣嘢，一就係突觸，另一個就係神經肌肉接點。嗱，其實兩個都係一個 gap 位嚟嘅，而突觸呢個 gap 位咧就係兩個神經元之間 嗰個空隙。而神經肌肉接點咧就係神經元同埋肌肉纖維之間嘅嗰個 gap 位啦。而當中我哋好依賴嘅就係神經遞質，點樣將一個神經脈衝由一個神經元去到另一個神經元，又或者將呢個神經脈衝由一個神經元去到肌肉纖維咧，都係靠神經遞質噶啦。而呢個 gap 位咧係遍佈於唔同神經元之間嘅，感覺神經元、中間神經元同埋運動神經元。而當中我哋都學過啦。感覺神經元係接駁住感受器，而運動神經元係接駁住效應器。而神經肌肉接點咧就係神經元接駁住肌肉纖維啦。當中我哋學過嘅就係骨骼肌，當中有屈肌同埋伸肌呢兩款肌肉係以一個相反嘅模式去運作嘅。當一個肌肉去收縮嘅時候，另一個肌肉就會放鬆，反之亦然啦。所以佢哋咧英文就係 meta-cognition muscle 或者 opposing muscle 啦。而當呢兩種肌肉去合作嘅時候咧，就會帶動到身體嘅活動啦。咁呢條題目啦，有啲咩嘅變奏呢？第一款咧就係問翻我哋一個神經脈衝喺一個神經元入面，同埋喺兩個神經元之間係點樣傳送嘅呢？個傳送方向又會如何呢？而你會見到2012年咧都有兩條嘅 MC， 第一條咧就係問翻一個神經脈衝喺一個神經元係點樣傳啦，第二條咧就係問翻喺突觸嗰處我哋有啲化學物質係釋放咗出嚟，其實即係神經遞質。咁我又同以下三款嘅神經脈衝嘅傳遞又有啲咩嘅關係呢？咁所以啦，呢兩條題目咧，如果大家唔係咁記得嘅，快啲睇翻啲片啦。第二條咧就係問翻突觸嘅重要性，非常之還原基本步啦。第一個重要性就係講緊只有 axon 嘅末端先能夠釋放到神經遞質，所以突觸只係容許神經脈衝循住一個方向去傳送。而第二個重要性就係講緊啲神經元咧係可以同其他神經元去連接咗好多個嘅突觸嘅。咁即係話好多個神經元咧係可以匯聚喺同一個突觸，或者一個突觸咧可以散播去好多唔同嘅神經元，就令到神經元之間咧可以溝通，從而就達至到一個協調嘅功能啦。215 question 5 is about nervous system and the muscle contraction. So there are two photographs. Photograph P, it shows the several muscle fiber associated with the terminal parts of the neuron R. Photograph Q, it shows the detailed structure of the neuromuscular junction.So before we talk about the question, let's do the good practice. For the neuron R, structure S and T, this small ball, what is it? Neuron R, it is the motor neuron. How can we know that? Because it's connected to the muscle fiber, and the muscle fiber is an effector. And the structure S, it is the mitochondrion, and the structure T, it is a synaptic vesicle. So remember this good practice. No matter it is MC question or a short question, so they must ask you the structure, no matter the name or the function. So you can see that for part A, which type of neuron does R belong to?Give a reason for your answer. So for this question, it's checking the concept that we need to determine the type of neuron based on the connection. Does this neuron connected to the receptor, or this neuron is connected to the effector? We say that there are several muscle fibers associated with the terminal parts of the neuron R. So muscle fiber, it is an effector. Therefore, neuron R, it is the motor neuron. In this case, the effector is the muscle fiber.And for part B, what is the functional relationship between structure S and T shown in the photograph Q? So for the question, it's asking the functional relationship. What does it mean? It means that how do they cooperate? How do they work together? And we can change the question word a bit. Even the question is different, but the answer is the same. So I can ask you that according to the photograph Q, state the adaptive features of the synapse.By using the structure S and structure T. And you still need to talk about the structure S and T and how do they work for the synapse. So we need to recall the function of the synapse and also recall the structures inside the synapse, the synaptic node, the mitochondrion and the synaptic vesicles. What are the functions? So for this diagram, I would like to provide you a clear understanding. How can you recognize the mitochondrion and the synaptic vesicles? It contains the neurotransmitters. So for the basic idea, mitochondrion is the main site where the energy releasing stage of the respiration takes place. That means it can release the energy. And for the synapse, when the nerve impulse reaches the synaptic node, it will stimulate the synaptic node to release the chemical called neurotransmitter from the synaptic vesicles. So we connect these two concepts together. Mitochondrion provides energy for the secretion of the neurotransmitter stored in the synaptic vesicle. And apart from the secretion, you can also talk about the synthesis and the resynthesis of the neurotransmitter. First of all, we need energy to produce the neurotransmitter in the synaptic node. And after the neurotransmitter is released to the synaptic cleft, and the neurotransmitter will diffuse across the synaptic cleft, arrive the dendron of the next neuron. When they bind to the receptor and stimulate another nerve impulse, the neurotransmitter will be broken down. Broken neurotransmitter will be reabsorbed to the synaptic node. And then we also need the energy to resynthesize the neurotransmitter. So that's why apart from the secretion, there are two possibilities you can talk about. For part C, it asks us to describe how nerve impulses can be transmitted across the neuromuscular junction, leading to muscle contraction. So any keywords we can recall from parts A and B: motor neuron, synapse, mitochondrion, synaptic vesicle, and the neurotransmitter. Of course, we can use some keywords in this answer. And for the neuromuscular junction, actually is a type of synapse. For the synapse, it's not only the structure between different neurons, it's also the gap between the neuron and the muscle fiber. We have a special name for it. It's called neuromuscular junction. And this diagram is summarized the basic idea of the transmission of nerve impulse from the motor neuron to the muscle fiber. First of all, when a nerve arrives the motor nerve ending or the axon terminal, it will trigger the release of the neurotransmitter from the synaptic vesicle into the neuromuscular junction. And then the neurotransmitter will diffuse across the synapse and bind to the receptor site on the membrane of the muscle fiber, and the muscle fiber will generate an electrical impulse that trigger muscle contraction. One keyword I would like to talk about is that in the muscle fiber, we use the wordings electrical impulse, but not the nerve impulse, because for the muscle fiber, it is not the nerve. It is not the nerve fiber. Therefore, we do not use the word nerve impulse. So let's talk about the curriculum mapping. This question, it starts from the muscle contraction, and there are two major concepts. Check: synapse and the muscular junction. The key concept we need to talk about is the neurotransmitter. So for the synapse, that's the gap between different neurons: sensory neuron, interneuron, and the motor neuron. And we also need to recall the connection between the receptor and the sensory neuron, the effector and the motor neuron. And for the neuromuscular junction, that's the gap between the neuron and the muscle fiber. And for the skeletal muscle, we need to recall the concept of flexor and the extensor. They work in an opposite manner, and the flexor is contracting, the extensor is relaxing, or vice versa. So that's why we call them the antagonistic muscle or the opposing muscle. When they work together, it will bring about the body movement. So any possible question variation in this question? So for it can ask you the direction of the nerve impulse in a neuron and between two neurons. So you can see for the 2012, there are two MC questions asked about it. The direction of impulse transmission in a neuron and the chemicals released at the synapse, that means the neurotransmitter, are responsible for the impulse transmission from which one is or are involved. For the second variation, it can ask you the importance of synapse. So let's have a very quick revision together. Only the endings of the axon can release the neurotransmitter. Therefore, synapse allow nerve impulses to travel in one direction only. And for the second important, most neurons form more one synapse with other neurons, so they can communicate with many other neurons to achieve the coordination that involve many receptors and effectors.